Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a first look at the new Sigma 14mm f1.8 Art. And this is a lens that a lot of you have been asking me when I'm going to take a look at it, and so I guess the answer is now. And so I have begun taking a look at it, but here today we're going to take a look at the breakdown of the kind of the classification. I'm going to give you a closer look at the build quality, a few observations about some options concerning filters, things like that. And then we'll come back and I'll give you a look at a few early photos and some information where you can find more. Okay, I want to start by just pointing out once again that I really appreciate Sigma including these nice padded cases with their lenses. It's something that I wish more manufacturers would do, and anyway, I just want to, I kind of sometimes gripe against other companies not doing it, but I do want to take a moment here to give Sigma credit, the fact that they do it. And so here today, we're going to take a look here at this very cool looking 14mm f1.8 lens. And so we're going to start at ground zero here by noting, as you look at that beautiful front, bulbous element, it looks really fantastic here at the moment. But of course, that also creates the #1 difficulty for wide-angle lenses like this, and that is that these are lenses that often you want to use filters on, and of course, you cannot use traditional filters with any kind of curved front element lenses. Now, that gives you leaves you basically with a couple of options. There are aftermarket filter holders. For example, I use for a Tamron, which has the 15-30 f2.8. It has kind of a similar design here with a fixed lens hood and a bulbous front element. And so I use the Photodiox Wonder Pana system. And of course that works fine, except for you end up with a big filter holder and very large square filters. So, not necessarily always the most elegant solution for everyone. Fortunately, Sigma, and I like the fact that they have, put some thought into this. And while there isn't, in the case of some Canon lenses, there actually is a built-in filter holder in the back where you can use gel filters or small ND type filters in the back. There's no such option here. However, Sigma does have an option that it can be added to this, and it is the FHR11. I did a little research on their website and I saw that it cost $36 for this add-on accessory that is added to this rear mount here and will allow you to slip gel filters or small filters that will cover the back. And I just recently contacted by a company that makes some of those rear filters, and unfortunately I had to tell them no because I had no lens at the time that actually took them to review it on. And neither do I have that filter holder here, but the fact that Sigma is selling it on their website for 36 bucks is encouraging because, that's not a huge investment and it could add a whole lot of functionality in a much smaller, compact way. So the other thing about having a fixed lens hood is, of course, it means that you have cap. And so it is, it's much larger. And one thing I don't like about these is that, you're trying to, if you're out shooting, a lot of times you might slip, the lens cap into a pocket. It's a whole lot harder to slip into your cap right there. On a positive note, however, it does have a bit of flocking here, which helps to provide just that extra little bit of compression, which means that you're not going to have an issue with this involuntarily just falling off. And so that is at least a positive there. Unfortunately, when you get to the bulbous front element, this kind of lens cap is essentially unavoidable. Now, looking at the lens as a whole here, this is mounted on a Canon 5D Mark IV. One thing, if you either have used or you watched my coverage of the Sigma 12-24mm f4 Art lens, you will recognize this profile as being nearly identical to that lens. This is a design that Sigma has now started to perfect, and there's a whole lot of similarities here. This lens is actually just slightly narrower around. It is 3.76 inches or a little over 95 millimeters around. The 12 to 24 millimeter is just a little bit bigger around, and so instead of 95 millimeters, it's it's a little over 100 millimeters in diameter there. In terms of the overall length, it's also just a little bit shorter. It is 4.96 inches, so right under 5 inches, whereas the 12 to 24 is basically a hair over 5 inches, or an additional 5 millimeters in length. Interestingly, however, although this is a little bit physically smaller, I mean, minutely smaller, it is minutely heavier, however. So it weighs in at 2.57 pounds, that's 1,170 grams, compared to 1,150 grams for the 12 to 24. So yes, this is a heavy lens. There's no doubt about that. And so if you were looking for a compact or light solution, this is not it. And as you look into the front of that lens, you can see why. It has got a tremendous amount of glass, and so not only is there the glass that is required to cover such a wide focal length, 14 millimeters is very wide on a full frame body, but of course there has to be enough glass there to allow for a maximum aperture of f1.8, which is of course the largest or the widest aperture available on a lens with this wide of a focal length. And so this is a unique lens in that aspect, and so that's the reason why it is heavy. And of course, if you're not new to the art series, then you ought to recognize that Sigma has yet to really make a truly light lens in the art series, or a small one for that matter. That's just not really the operating procedure with art series lenses. Now, taking a little bit closer look, you'll see that it has quite a wide manual focus ring, and it actually has a decent amount of focus throw there. I don't know how many people will be using this lens to manual focus it, but of course it's nice to have a nicely damped focus ring that is there. And one area which you are likely to use a manual focus ring like this with a lens like this is if you are shooting stars at night. And so if you can determine where actual infinity focus comes, if it's not at the hard stop, and I haven't had a chance to shoot astro to determine that yet, but if it isn't, you at least can learn that position, and so you can go ahead and set that. I often do it when I can set it in a place where I actually have better light to work with, and then when I'm in the field ready for that actual shot, I'll just make sure to have the one switch on there off. And so you have just a straight autofocus, manual focus switch, and that's all that you have as far as that. Fortunately, this lens continues the more recent trend in the art series where there is a rear gasket and some internal seals. The opinion thus far is that the Sigma Art weather sealing isn't, maybe at the top of the heap in terms of the thoroughness internally, but at least they're heading in the right direction. And so I'm very happy to see that on that, because this is the kind of lens, frankly, that you're likely to use in inclement weather, or, because of a wide focal length, it means you have to get closer to things in a lot of compositions, and that will include things like waves or water that sprays at you. So having some weather sealing is important for that. Looking a little bit closer at the design here, the minimum focus distance on this particular lens is 10.63 inches or 27 centimeters. Don't expect a great reproduction ratio or magnification with such a wide focal length. If you're looking for a macro lens, this is not it. And it will give you a rather poor 1 to 9.8 maximum reproduction, or about 0.10 times, which is pretty close to the bottom of the heap. Ironically, if you're using the 12 to 24 millimeter, it actually doubles that up to 0.20 times magnification, which is, fairly decent. Like the 12 to 24, this is 16 elements in 11 groups, and so for a fixed focal length prime lens, it is optically pretty complex, 16 elements, and it has a 9 rounded aperture blade aperture, and that is, again, that's standard for the Sigma Art series. Autofocus, in my experience thus far, is quick and quiet, and I have no concerns about that. You can see the rack there going quite quickly, and of course it has no problem quickly focusing and taking the photo there, and so no complaints when it comes to that. And of course, being able to open that aperture up to f1.8 is pretty awesome. Now, this lens doesn't come cheap. It comes in at $15.99 in the US market, which is the same price as the 12 to 24 f4, which means that it is tied with that lens as the most expensive lens in the art lineup thus far. Here in Canada, it's going to run you close to $2,000. And so it's not a throwaway purchase, but then again, it does at least do something that other lenses cannot do. So as you can see, this lens is, pretty much what I would expect it to be at this point. It's a very familiar kind of design philosophy shared with some other Sigma wide-angle lenses. It's heavy and it's somewhat bulky, but again, that was to be expected. The good news, however, is that it is an effective lens even at f1.8. Some of you were disappointed with the last Art Series lens that I reviewed, the 24 to 70 f2.8 Art. And I think in that case, Sigma was actually maybe a victim of its own marketing, in which it has marketed the Art Series as just being, optically superior. And the Sigma 24 to 70 Art, while I think it actually is a very good lens, it wasn't optically superior, and so I think a lot of people are just disappointed by it. But I think that this lens is going to be back on the track of what people expect. I do look forward to putting it to the test, shooting some astro, and I'm hoping for some clear skies here in the near future to get some stars shot and give you some info on the Coma performance. But in the meantime, you can take a look at some of these images, and then if you want to see more, check out my image gallery. And what I'm going to do for my patrons is I'm going to upload some RAW files. And I usually don't share my RAW files, but for those of you that have gone to the trouble to become a supporter of me, I want to reward you for that. And so I will upload some RAW files from this lens that you can play around with in Lightroom or Photoshop or your editing software of choice for yourself. I'm Dustin Abbott, and of course, if you haven't already, you can follow me on social media or become one of my patrons to get access to those files. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for pushing me back past 30,000 subscribers. Pretty excited about that. And of course, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.